Happiness is one of the oldest questions in human history, yet it feels strangely urgent today. Because somewhere between rising living standards, instant entertainment, global communication, and an endless supply of conveniences, a quiet contradiction has taken shape. We have more comfort than any generation before us. Yet many people feel deeply unfulfilled. Anxiety rates climb, burnout spreads. Surveys show that happiness does not rise consistently with income beyond a certain point. And so a paradox emerges. Progress has not guaranteed emotional well-being. So we circle back to a timeless human mystery and ask it again, but with modern urgency. What truly makes a life feel good today? What forces shape the inner experience behind all our outer achievements? If we peel back the layers of modern life, its bright screens, its demands, its comparisons, its rewards, we find ourselves confronted with an old but persistent truth. The human mind has not evolved at the pace of our technology. We live in cities built for millions, but we carry the nervous systems of primates designed for tribes of a few dozen. We can summon information instantly, but our brains interpret that flood of content through mechanisms built for survival, not serenity. As a result, happiness is often caught between what our biology was built for and what our world has become. To understand what truly makes life worthwhile, we need to understand the mind itself. And so we begin with something simple, yet essential. What is happiness? Clarifying the idea. Across cultures and centuries, happiness has worn many names: joy, fulfillment, flourishing, contentment. It's one of those universal experiences that everyone recognizes, but no one defines the same way. For some, it's excitement. For others, calm. For some, it's meaning. For others, pleasure. But in psychology, happiness usually emerges in three distinct forms. There is pleasure, the quick spark of delight that comes from novelty, enjoyment, or comfort. It's the brain's short-term reward system, dopamine lighting up as if saying, "Yes, do that again." There is satisfaction, the deeper sense of accomplishment that follows progress or completion. It sits closer to long-term well-being, fueled by our internal evaluation systems that track growth, autonomy, and the feeling that our actions matter. And there is meaning, the sense that life is coherent, connected, and purposeful. This form of happiness is less about emotion and more about direction, the feeling that our efforts form a story worth living. When we talk about being happy in a sustained way, we usually mean some blend of these three: pleasure, satisfaction, and meaning braided together in a way that feels balanced. Positive psychology, which studies the science of well-being, consistently points to a handful of predictors that matter most. Not wealth, not achievements, not fame, but relationships, purpose, autonomy, gratitude, and emotional regulation. The pieces that often go unnoticed in a world that celebrates visible success more than invisible well-being. Under the surface, neuroscience adds another layer. The brain evaluates experience through a complex choreography of chemicals and circuits. Dopamine, often mislabeled as the pleasure chemical, is not about joy at all. It's about anticipation, tracking progress toward goals. Serotonin supports mood stability and emotional resilience. Oxytocin deepens trust and connection. Endorphins soften pain and amplify moments of natural joy. Together, these systems don't simply produce happiness, they shape how we interpret life itself. The brain is always evaluating: am I safe? Am I connected? Am I growing? When the answer is yes, happiness becomes more than a moment. It becomes a condition of being. But something stands in the way. something built into the architecture of the mind itself. The deep insight. Human beings adapt astonishingly fast. It's one of our greatest strengths, but also one of the biggest traps in the pursuit of happiness. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation, the tendency to return to a baseline level of happiness after positive or negative changes. A raise, a compliment, a new phone, a bigger home. Each gives a temporary boost, but the brain quickly normalizes it. The reward fades, and the mind scans for the next thing. This creates the treadmill effect. No matter how fast we run toward pleasure or success, the finish line moves with us. Material gains become emotional mirages, visible, desirable, but ultimately fleeting. This doesn't mean pleasure is meaningless, only that it cannot carry the weight of long-term fulfillment. What does? Relationships, purpose, autonomy, gratitude. Again and again, the data converge on a simple truth. We are profoundly social creatures. The longest study on human well-being, the Harvard Study of Adult Development, now more than 80 years old, arrived at a quiet but powerful conclusion. The strongest predictor of life satisfaction is the quality of close relationships, not achievements, not wealth, not intelligence, connection. People who feel deeply supported and deeply known live longer, healthier, happier lives. The study did not say perfect relationships, just trusting ones, supportive ones, real ones. Beyond relationships, purpose offers another anchor. Humans are narrative-driven beings. We suffer when our lives feel random and thrive when they feel meaningful. Purpose gives structure to experience, turning effort into satisfaction and hardship into story. Then there is autonomy, the feeling that we have control over our choices. Even small freedoms, time to rest, space to think, the ability to say no, play a huge role in well-being. Finally, gratitude serves as an antidote to adaptation. By paying attention to what is steady and meaningful, gratitude disrupts the cycle of wanting more. It helps the brain notice abundance rather than absence. But if the science is so clear, why do so many people struggle? Because modern life is built in ways that subtly work against these systems. It amplifies comparison. It fragments attention. It rewards speed more than depth. And so, the ancient human mind, already prone to biases and miscalculations, becomes overwhelmed. The gap between what we have and what we feel grows wider. To understand this gap, imagine two lives, two paths through the same world, shaped by different assumptions about what happiness is. A cinematic thought experiment. Picture a city at dusk. Lights flicker on across the skyline. Traffic hums below, each car carrying a person with dreams, worries, plans, and unspoken hopes. The world moves fast around them, but inside every mind, the same ancient questions rest quietly. Am I enough? Am I loved? Am I safe? Am I living the right story? In one apartment lives Alex. Every day, Alex wakes up measuring life through achievement, promotions, applause, upgrades. He believes happiness sits somewhere just beyond the next success. He scrolls through social media, comparing his life to curated images. He works long hours chasing a future he hopes will make the present worthwhile. When he gets what he wants, a raise, a new device, a moment of recognition, the dopamine rises, then falls. Hedonic adaptation resets the emotional scoreboard. The pleasure fades quickly, replaced by the quiet whisper, "What's next?" In another apartment lives Jordan. Jordan's life is quieter, but intentionally so. Mornings begin with a small ritual, a moment of gratitude, a message to a close friend, a walk outside to feel the air. Jordan works hard, but directs effort toward meaningful goals. There is ambition, but not obsession. Progress, but also presence. Relationships are nurtured actively. Small conversations, shared laughter, regular check-ins. Jordan feels connected, grounded, supported. Both individuals live in the same city. Both face stress, uncertainty, ambition, and pressure. Both experience setbacks and moments of joy. But their emotional trajectories diverge. Alex's happiness rises and falls with circumstance. It depends on external markers, comparisons, accolades, possessions. Jordan's happiness grows from internal experiences, connection, purpose, gratitude. The science here is not moral, but explanatory. It is not judging ambition, success, or comforts. It is simply showing how the mind interprets them. Alex is not wrong. He is simply following instincts shaped by a world of visibility and achievement. Jordan is not superior, just aligned with psychological patterns that support well-being. And now the question opens wider. What happens when an entire society begins to live like Alex, measuring worth through comparison, chasing success at the pace of technology, running faster on the hedonic treadmill without realizing the treadmill itself cannot deliver fulfillment? We begin to understand why a world that is more comfortable than ever can still feel emotionally fragile. Modern life and the science of happiness. In a world of abundance, one might expect happiness to flourish. But abundance introduces its own challenges. It fragments attention. It multiplies choices. It amplifies expectations. It reshapes the brain's reward system in subtle ways. Consider social media. It connects billions of people, yet often leaves them feeling more alone. Platforms are engineered around engagement loops, tiny hits of dopamine linked to likes, comments, and notifications. These signals mimic social approval, but without depth. Over time, the brain learns to crave these micro-rewards, weakening the satisfaction derived from slower, deeper forms of connection. Comparison becomes constant. Our minds, evolutionarily tuned to evaluate status within small groups, now compare us to millions. The result is emotional distortion. Other people's highlights become the backdrop against which we measure our private struggles. Consumer culture adds another layer. We are surrounded by messages insisting that happiness lies in ownership, novelty, upgrades. The modern marketplace is built on the promise that one more purchase will soothe the ache of dissatisfaction. But once hedonic adaptation does its work, the satisfaction dissolves, leaving the craving intact. Burnout completes the cycle. A world that prizes productivity often neglects rest, reflection, and authentic connection. The nervous system was never designed to operate under constant stimulation. Chronic stress suppresses serotonin, disrupts sleep, narrows attention, and diminishes emotional resilience. So the puzzle becomes clear. Many people feel unfulfilled, not because they are weak or ungrateful, but because the design of modern life nudges the brain toward dissatisfaction. Happiness requires the very things modern life often erodes: presence, community, purpose, autonomy, rest. But the story doesn't end there. Science also shows a path forward, a way to live meaningfully even within the chaos of the contemporary world. This is where the essay begins to turn from insight to practice, from understanding to possibility. The science of happiness doesn't exist to tell us what we should value. It simply reveals what the human mind needs to thrive. And beneath the complexity of culture, technology, and modern expectations, a set of simple, universal patterns emerges. They point toward a kind of practical wisdom, not inspirational slogans, not quick fixes, but steady habits that gently reshape the brain and open space for a life that feels more grounded, more connected, and more meaningful. If we look closely at the research across psychology, neuroscience, anthropology, and philosophy, we find that while happiness is deeply personal, its foundations are remarkably consistent. The rest of this essay explores those foundations with clarity, depth, and warmth. Practical wisdom, gratitude, relationships, purpose, autonomy, emotional awareness. These are not abstract ideals. They are experiences that change the brain itself, shifting perception, changing attention, regulating stress, and strengthening the circuits that support long-term well-being. Gratitude, rewriting the mind's habits. Gratitude is sometimes misunderstood as a quick exercise or a polite gesture. But in neuroscience, gratitude is a powerful attentional shift. It teaches the brain to notice what is stable, supportive, and abundant, rather than what is lacking or incomplete. Regular gratitude activates neural pathways associated with contentment and emotional balance. It reduces the grip of hedonic adaptation by helping us see what we would otherwise take for granted. It does not erase difficulty, it simply widens the frame. A meaningful gratitude practice is simple. Pick one moment each day that you would miss if it disappeared. A conversation, a meal, a warm room, a message from a friend, a quiet break. Notice it. Name it. Let it land fully. This small act retrains the brain to recognize fullness in ordinary life. Relationships, the strongest predictor of joy. Across studies, cultures, and decades, one insight repeats like a refrain. Humans are happiest when they are deeply connected. Loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of being truly known. And when people feel unseen, the brain interprets it as a threat, activating stress pathways originally meant for physical danger. Supportive relationships do the opposite. They silence the alarm system. They stabilize emotions. They even strengthen the immune system. Strengthening relationships doesn't require grand gestures. It requires presence, small connections, regular check-ins, the courage to share honestly, the willingness to listen without rushing. A simple practice. Once a day, reach out to someone you care about with sincerity. No agenda, no performance, just connection. Over time, these small threads weave into something durable and nourishing. Purpose, the compass of well-being. Purpose doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't require a heroic mission or a perfect life plan. Purpose is simply the feeling that our actions contribute to something meaningful, something larger than momentary pleasure. Neuroscience shows that purpose stabilizes the brain's reward systems. It reduces anxiety by giving structure to the future. It creates a narrative that makes effort feel worthwhile, transforming challenges from burdens into stepping stones. Purpose can be found in creativity, caregiving, community, curiosity, learning, service, exploration. It grows through doing, not thinking. A gentle question to ask yourself: what small action could I take today that aligns with the kind of person I want to become? Chertoon. Purpose builds one action at a time. Autonomy, the power of choice. Humans thrive when they feel that life is shaped by their own agency. Even small forms of autonomy matter. Choosing how to spend an hour, choosing who to spend time with, choosing what to pursue or release. Modern life often constrains autonomy with constant obligations. but the feeling of autonomy can be rebuilt with intentional boundaries and small, consistent choices. A useful tool is the choice check-in. When you feel overwhelmed or disengaged, pause and ask, is this action aligned with my values, or am I running on autopilot? Even a shift of 5% toward autonomy changes how the brain processes experience. It moves life from reaction to direction, managing comparison and expectation. One of the greatest sources of modern unhappiness is the relentless pull of comparison. Humans naturally compare. Our ancestors needed to understand their status within a tribe to survive. But today, comparison occurs on a global scale, at impossible resolution. The brain struggles under this weight. It interprets others' success as personal deficiency. It amplifies lack rather than possibility. The solution is not to eliminate comparison, but to reshape it. A healthy mindset. Compare yourself not to other people's outcomes, but to your own direction. To who you were a month ago, a year ago, to the choices you're making today. Expectation also distorts happiness. When the mind predicts a certain outcome, an experience, a milestone, a reward, it creates a mental image of how life should feel. If reality falls short of that image, even slightly, the brain interprets it as a loss, even when the experience itself is good. Managing expectation doesn't mean lowering standards. It means softening assumptions and being open to the actual texture of experience. When we release rigid expectations, the mind becomes freer to experience satisfaction directly, supporting the brain's natural happiness systems. Well-being is not a psychological concept alone. It is physiological. The brain thrives on small behaviors that seem mundane, but profoundly influence mood. Sleep resets emotional circuits, regulates stress hormones, and supports neural plasticity. Movement boosts endorphins, increases serotonin, and calms the nervous system. Nature reduces rumination and restores cognitive balance. Stillness. Even a few minutes of breathing or quiet soothes chaos and widens awareness. Happiness grows from the daily care of the nervous system. Mental models that transform experience. Several simple models help reshape how we interpret life. The attention model. What you focus on becomes your emotional reality. Train attention toward what nourishes rather than drains. The energy model. Notice what activities replenish your energy and which deplete it. Happiness grows where energy flows. The story model. Humans create stories about their lives. Ask whether the story you're telling yourself supports growth or generates fear. The compassion model. Treat yourself as you would a close friend, with gentleness, honesty, and patience. Self-criticism exhausts the mind. Compassion stabilizes it. These are not techniques, but perspectives, ways of encountering each moment with clarity. Why this matters today. We live in the most connected era in history, but many people feel emotionally distant. We have access to endless information, yet struggle to understand ourselves. We have more opportunities than any generation before us, yet many feel the weight of choice, pressure, and comparison. Happiness is not disappearing. It is simply harder to hear beneath the noise. The science of happiness is not a manual for perfect living. It is a compass in a world of infinite directions. It reminds us that despite cultural trends, despite technology, despite the pace of modern life, the foundations of human well-being remain beautifully simple. Connection, purpose, gratitude, presence, growth. These forces cut through the complexity of the modern world and return us to something ancient, something woven into the fabric of our biology and the architecture of our minds. A gentle closing reflection. Imagine stepping back from the noise for a moment. Imagine recognizing that the mind you carry is ancient and delicate, shaped for connection, meaning, and steady rhythms. Imagine discovering that you already have the ingredients for happiness, woven into the mundane, hidden in the familiar, waiting quietly in the corners of daily life. Happiness, the science shows, is not the result of achieving a perfect life. It is the art of relating to life with clarity. It is the simple warmth of being known, the quiet satisfaction of progress, the presence to notice what is already good, the courage to grow toward what matters. And in this way, happiness is less a destination and more a direction, less a trophy and more a practice, less an achievement and more a way of being alive. A worthwhile life is not built in extraordinary moments. It is built in the small, steady decisions that shape the emotional landscape of each day. The way we connect, the way we pay attention, the way we choose our actions, the way we tell the story of who we are. If the science of happiness reveals anything, it is this. A meaningful life is within reach. Not because life is easy, but because the mind is capable of extraordinary resilience, connection, and transformation. In a world that moves fast, happiness grows in the spaces we slow down enough to feel. In a culture that shouts, happiness whispers. In a time that demands more, happiness often emerges from less. And once we learn to listen, really listen, happiness becomes less of a mystery and more of a companion, guiding us gently toward a life that feels not just lived, but truly worthwhile.